1, 2, and 4. It's the love of God that sheds precious blessings on my head. I have made in my Lord. I will hide in my rock and never depart. It shall rule there alone. The love of God in the heart of Almighty earth and working hard. The soul will glow like Jesus in His tender mercy. If the heart is made its dwelling place, the love of God goes like a flame, eternally. It is the same. The love of God will never ever lose its glory till it's seen face to face. And the Son of God came down with His love our lives to crown. He with us would remain. Greater love there could not be. Jesus died for you and me. In our hearts He will reign. The love of God, the soul will glow like Jesus in His tender mercy. If the heart is made its dwelling place, the love of God goes like a flame, eternally. It is the same. The love of God will never ever lose its glory till we see Him face to face. While His lovers surely die, we are walking in the light. He has shown us the road. We His glory must reflect, lest our dimness and neglect keep some soul from His God. The love of God within the heart of Almighty earth and wondering heart. The soul will glow like Jesus in His tender mercy. If the heart is made its dwelling place, the love of God goes like a flame, eternally. It is the same. The love of God will never ever lose its glory till we see Him face to face. At this time, let's mark the invitation song number 207. 207. And then our next song before the prayer is number 37. 37. And there's convenience. Shall we stand? And remain standing for prayer. Can you count the stars of evening that are shining in the sky? Can you count the clouds that daily over all the world go by? God the Lord, who doth not slumber, keepeth all the boundless hunger Brother Benny.
I can't say how pleased I am to be here. It is an absolute honor and privilege for me to be here. Um, I don't think I know any one of you. Steve and I have been on the email, and he was very good in responding to the email. In Australia, we would say he doesn't know me from a bar of soap. You know, he doesn't know me from anything. I just came out of the blue, and I wrote that email. And I don't know whether you're surprised to see an Asian fellow coming up. I think we did a similar thing with another congregation in a place called Duncan in Oklahoma. On the way back, we were visiting Austin. Uh, Maybe I should go back and tell a little bit about the background for this visit. I wanted to come to the US. One of the main reasons was to visit some old friends of mine, some former missionaries, some teachers, some retired people who had played a deep influence on my life, my spiritual life. And many of them are getting old and older and not likely to come and visit us in Australia anymore. So I just wanted to have one last trip and thank them. And then my co-elder, Charles, there's only 2 elders in our congregation, said, could you, if you can, make some slight detours and visit a few congregations who we found have helped us at Belmore Road 40 to 50 years ago. And we found you guys because we were going through the archives, and we found a number of congregations. We found 4 that we could identify who have helped Belmore Road when we were founded, established in 1969. For the first 12 to 15 years, we were not financially self-supporting, so we received money from outside. And we found at least 4 congregations. There are probably more, but 4 from the US, and you're one of them. And so I started writing emails and contacting them. And Steve responded very well. Another congregation that also responded is in Duncan in Oklahoma. And when they didn't respond to my emails, so I had to phone them. And the first time I got the preacher, his name is Ron Stowe, I think it was Stowe. I said to him, oh, this is Benny Tabaluyan from Melbourne, Australia, and you gave some money, 40, 50 years ago. And straight away, there was this, I can feel the caginess that comes in. And, I thought, and so we went, but he was very kind. He talked with me some more. And then when I mentioned a few names, and then he knew those names. They have since passed on. And then we had this wonderful conversation, and then we ended up fixing a time and a day. It was on Thursday, wasn't it, when we were there. And Harold was driving me, and we had a wonderful time with them. But when we first came in, I think they were a bit surprised to see this Asian fellow. I think he was expecting a blonde crocodile Dundee, with a big knife. And I'm the opposite of that. But we had an absolutely great time, and I thought it was going to be a 10, 15-minute handshake and thank you. We had written a nice letter. We had prepared a plaque for them to thank them. But inside their fellowship room, they had 12 people and members. And I don't think they have anybody who went back to 50 years ago. But they had one elder whose uncle was an elder at that time, and we were able to meet him. And one other strange thing was we had this lady reporter, journalist from the local newspaper, the Duncan Banner, and she started taking photographs and recording. And then by the time we got back to Oklahoma City a couple of days later, we made the front page of the Duncan Banner. How about that? Because they thought it was a wonderful story that there's this congregation in Australia that has been established and came back to say thank you. But putting that to one side, all I want to say today is a really huge thank you. Don tells me that there's probably half a dozen people here who were here back in the 1969 or a few years later who made the decision or who contributed, and I suspect that you contributed probably close to 10 years to us. And I want to show you the story. I want to tell you a little bit about what has happened since then and where we are now. So I've got some PowerPoint slides, and then we'll have a 7-minute video or so at the end. And I hope that you will enjoy that. And during the PowerPoint presentation, I'm happy for you to raise questions and ask me questions. My wife and I migrated back to Australia in 2003, so we've been back 16 years. Before that, I was a student, and I started as a 12. So Jace is one of yours? Yeah? How old? 9. So I was a little bit older than you. What's your name? Jason. I was about 12, Jason, so 3 years older than you when I landed in Australia, and I went to boarding school. And one of the missionaries, it was after Jack and Thelma Hardcastle, it was Dave H. and Leland Roper, who was very kind to me and got to know me at church. And so, anyway, they were special for me. And they were in that congregation, and they helped me to get to know God a bit better. So that's how I started. Then I studied, I went to law school, and I became an attorney and worked in Australia and Hong Kong, and then came back to Australia. Long story, was chasing a girl in Singapore, so ended up working in Singapore, and ended up staying for 12 years, married there, had 3 children, and then in 2003 came back to Australia, and we now have 4 children. And my wife should be here. I wish she could be here, but one of our kids is preparing for exams, and she has to look after her. But anyway, we have 4 kids. I'm now semi-retired, and so I can do these short trips overseas. And again, my only purpose here is to say thank you. So let me go through the slides and tell you a little bit more about Belmore Road. Will this work? Okay. And if you are ever visiting Melbourne in Australia, please let me know. So those of you who have not been to Australia, I've found 3 people so far, Marcus and Catherine Wilson. And where's Christy? Christy's also been to Perth. Anybody else been to Australia? Oh, there's a couple more. Fantastic. Oh, yeah, I know Steve and Harold and Sally, so there's half a dozen of you. So Australia's about, 9,000 miles away or so, 9 to 10,000 miles away, depending where you go. 25 million people, the size of continental United States, but less than 10% of your population in the US. Now, I come from the southern. We live here in Melbourne, the southernmost tip. I think the Wilsons were up in Brisbane. The 2 largest cities today are Sydney and Melbourne. Sydney is slightly bigger than us, but we are a very attractive city, and so we've been taking on about 1,000 new residents a week. So in a few more years' time, we'll be bigger than Sydney. And that's a scary thought for us Melburnians. But that's where we are. Churches of Christ, and I say non-denominational simply because there are many church buildings in Australia called Churches of Christ or Church of Christ. But it's actually your equivalent, I think, would be the Disciples of Christ or Christian Church. Now, if you don't know the difference, you better talk to Steve about that. I won't explain, but it's confusing for many American brethren who come to Australia because they come to a Church of Christ building and then suddenly you'll have a full band on stage or a female preacher. It sort of causes some consternation. But the non-denominational Churches of Christ, which we are sometimes called, or a cappella churches, there's about 80 congregations and only about 2,000 odd members spread throughout the 80. So if you do the maths, that's about 26 people per congregation. Harold and Sally are members of Memorial Road in Oklahoma City, and they have more in their congregation than the whole of Australia in terms of Churches of Christ. Okay? So there are only 7 congregations above 70 in number. That's adults and children, 8 with elderships. Now, Belmore Road is one of them. And you helped us. You are partly responsible for that, for us. What's Melbourne like? Well, it's bigger than LA, smaller than New York. That's the way I would explain it. That's the cityscape of Melbourne. From 2011 to 2017, for 7 consecutive years, it's been voted the most livable city in the world. We lost it, I think, to Vienna in the last year or two. It's usually in the top 5. It is a beautiful city, very gracious city, but it's also got its challenges, and one of the things is a lack of spiritual interest, and that's one of the biggest problems we face. Most of the churches are on the north or eastern side of Melbourne. We are directly east of Melbourne, and we've just helped plant a church on the west. 3 or 4 congregations in Melbourne collaboratively help plant this congregation. There's about a dozen people there now meeting every Sunday afternoon. So that's one of our mission efforts. What about our early days? That's a picture of Jack and Thelma. And now I know the connection. We don't know this story until this afternoon when Don tells me that Jack was the preacher here. Now, how many of you remember Jack? Oh, a few do. Wonderful. Well, he was the missionary who raised the funds and who bought the property. So that property at the background there is the property that they bought. There's 2 blocks of land, and that's now our church car park. I didn't know. I never met Jack and Thelma because I came in 1974. And when I came, it was Dave H. and Lillian, retired school teachers from Oklahoma, who decided to devote the rest of their lives to mission work. They've since died too. And in the mid-70s, that was me, when I was a lot slimmer. That's me then, that's Lillian. And that's our original building, and it's still there, but it's been expanded. This is a wonderful story. So we're 50 years old last month as a congregation, and we can trace 4 generations. So I don't know whether you can see this lady here in white. She's holding a little girl, baby girl in white. That was taken, we think, around about 1972. So there are 3 generations in that picture. So that's Joyce Buckingham, that's Leonie Smith, and the little baby girl is Rhonda. Rhonda is now this person. And she's married David, who's now one of our deacons. And that's Leonie in a wheelchair there. And she was one of our best Bible class teachers, Sunday school teachers. Even our kids, my kids, think the world of her. She's passed away. But a lovely, lovely lady. And we had given her a small plaque to honor her for the years of service she taught Bible school. And that was taken in 2013. So we can count at least 4 generations in a short span of 50 years. The timeline, this is our timeline. Charles and Trevor were first appointed elders, our first ever eldership in 2004. But if you look at the original first worship assembly was in August 1969. So a few weeks ago, in August, 22nd, 23rd was our anniversary weekend. And that's the reason why we started to dig into the history of the congregation. And that's how we found you. Okay, and that's where it began. We became financially self-supporting in the mid-'80s. Our first eldership, Charles and Trevor. Trevor is now, health-wise, is having difficulty. We've had 3 elders, now we're back down to 2. I joined the eldership 7 years ago. In 2008, we started a Chinese assembly. In 2015, we helped start that Western Melbourne church and Rob, who's a slightly different role, not like you, located in one place. He actually preaches in multiple places because we have a shortage of preachers. Unfortunately, that's the situation. We now have two congregations working under the same eldership, an English group with about 90, and a Chinese group that we started in 2008 with about 20. And the 90 is extremely diverse. We have more than a dozen nationalities. So that's why you've got an Asian-looking elder in an Australian congregation. In fact, I was born in Indonesia. Charles, my co-elder, is born in Malaysia. Of our 5 deacons, we have one South African family, one Australian, true blue Australian, we call them, born and bred in Melbourne. And we have another family from the Philippines, another family who's in Australia, but born in Australia, but Asian descent. We are totally mixed up, in terms of a congregation. Wonderful for potluck. We get food from all kinds of places, but quite challenging when it comes to communication. We over-communicate to make sure everybody understands where the congregation is going. Very important for teaching and for practices when we worship together, because for some people, where they come from, they do things slightly differently to us. And so we have to steer a middle path to say that let's do it this way so that we all can be together and be unified and practice the same things based on Scripture. So that's something that we've had to learn and adjust when you've got more than 1 or 2 nationalities and 1 or 2 cultures involved. Our budget nowadays is about 130,000. In Australia, that's considered very generous for a church our size. I look at your figures and I say, wow, you guys, if we are generous, you are super duper generous. More power to you. Keep that up. That's a good thing, to give money back for God's kingdom, for God's work. We have 2 camps that we run. In March, we have a family camp, which is a wonderful camp, and you'll see in the video a lot of the activities we do have been from camps. And the other one is our Revive camp, which is happening in a week or 2. Which is our youth camp, and that's a wonderful event as well. What are we doing in terms of mission points? Well, we are there in Australia. One of the most recent projects has been the Western Melbourne Church, which we started 2 years ago, but we've had more than 10 years we've been helping a small orphanage in Satupali in India. About 5-6 years ago, we started helping a children's home in Nias Island in Indonesia. So I was born in Indonesia, but on a different island. Bago in the Philippines, we help a group of churches that try to reach out to the village communities in Bago. And in Lae, in Papua New Guinea, we work with a couple of places, but the most recent one is to fundraise for reconstruction, some buildings of the Melanesia Bible College in Lae, which is to my knowledge, is the only Bible college affiliated with Churches of Christ, training preachers, and that's in Lae. So we've been involved in that. Most recently, we started Global Christian Studies, and Harold is the director of that, based in Oklahoma City. And the sweet thing about this is that the partnering congregation for us in the U.S. is Eastside in Midwest City. And they were one of the 4 congregations that helped provide money for us 40, 50 years ago. So I think we've sort of come full circle, and they are now working with us to create this Global Christian Studies. So let me explain what it is. We started this last year. We are creating a pathway to provide training for church leaders outside the U.S. It's only for outside the U.S. to have access to do graduate study in Bible or ministry in one of our church-affiliated schools. And we've chosen Harding School of Theology in Memphis because we think they're pretty decent, pretty rigorous, sound, and they've been very kind to us. So they provide a 50% discount for students on the pathway. We fundraise another 45, and we want the students to have some skin in the game, so we ask them to contribute about 2,500, which is about 5% of the cost. And we've got 2 students currently on the pathway, and we're evaluating others. And Eastside was one of the congregations that I said thank you to, and we had a lovely dinner with them on Thursday night in Oklahoma City, and that's when I first ate fried okra. That's an interesting experience. It was okay. It was okay. Yeah, well, I said okay. It was okay. You said pretty good. I said okay. This morning, I'm staying with a couple last night I was at Bentonville, and they gave me this morning grits. That was good. I like grits. I like grits. I like grits. What are some of the challenges we face? Okay, we face the challenge of finding godly leadership. You know, we're down to 2 elders. We've got 110 people in the combined group. You have 140, from what I see, 150, and you have 4 elders. I'm working twice as hard as you, Don. You know, we need more people. We need more deacons. And it's hard. Australia is one of the most secular societies. And to train up people, it takes years to train up people in terms of depth, understanding, and knowledge. So those of you who are growing, who want to serve one day as elders, deacons, preachers, keep at it. And young girls and women, don't think you're not important. I know of no single elder or deacon or preacher that can do a good job in what they do without the support of their wives. I do not know any single one. In fact, I have come across several men who are actually capable of doing stuff, but if their wives are not supportive, it will not work. That's been my honest experience. So those of you who are women, you know, look for men who will be able to lead and guide, who will be able to strengthen the church. That's just my personal encouragement. It takes 2 to make it work. Societal changes, massive changes. Melbourne is in the state of Victoria. So Victoria is like Arkansas, and Melbourne is the capital. It's like Little Rock. We have one of the most progressive state governments in the country. This last term of office, they have passed a law for euthanasia, physician-assisted dying, which has caused some consternation within the community. I don't know whether you have that in Arkansas or whether you have that in the US, but that's a very controversial question in Australia. So we've just gone ahead and passed it. We're the first state in Australia to pass that. In the last couple of months, the same government has passed a law which allows anyone over 18 to change their gender by signing what we call a statutory declaration. It's like an affidavit, if you know. So I was up till a few years ago with my attorney's practicing license, I can take a sworn document. You know, you can swear before me a document, and I can take that, and we call that a statutory declaration. So today, or when the bill becomes effective, it's been passed but not yet effective. When it becomes effective, if you're 18, you can change your gender. You can if you're female, you can say you are now a male by coming to a lawyer, like I was before with practicing certificate, and you can sign a document, and after that, you've just changed your gender. There's no requirement for any medical, any psychological, no, nothing, as long as you're 18. One of the only limitations is that you can't do that more than once every 12 months. Okay? And I'm serious. If you Google Victoria, gender change laws, you'll read it in the newspapers. Now that is causing consternation in our community because directors of women's refuges, we have a big problem with domestic violence in Australia. So directors of women's refuges, no Christian faith at all. They will say, hang on, we are protecting women who've been abused. They've come to us for protection. But the ex-partner, the ex-husband, can sign a document and come and chase after their wife, and there's no legal way to prevent him, her, from coming through. That's crazy. I've read school principals saying, how am I going to do rugby or football or tennis if it's women's soccer? What's there to stop a male who's just turned 18 to sign that document and say, I want to play? He says, I'm afraid these guys will just trample over my female students. We haven't figured it out yet, but the government says, we want to protect the rights of a very small minority who do need protection, and we need to treat them carefully and gently, but it is way overreach to just suddenly change the laws like that, in my view. Well, I'm just giving that to you as an explanation of the kind of societal changes we are facing, that probably you are not facing here, but that's where we are heading. And we need teachers and mentors, and we need a sense of discipleship, just going back to Scripture and understanding that the Christian faith is more than just coming here on Sundays. And it's good and necessary that we come here on Sundays, but it's more than that. It's how we develop the Christian faith day by day. Let me move on. That's us there, so that's Charles and me. That's Charles, that's me, and that's Sui and Pauline, and these are our deacons. It's a mixed bag. This was our church camp back in March, and Harold and Sally were there, which is a special treat. Harold was our guest speaker. And I just want to say a huge, big thank you. The congregation that you have helped start and contributed to has blossomed. We don't do things exactly the way you do. I have never worn a tie at Balmoral probably for more than 10 years. So this is the first time I've worn a tie on a Sunday. But since I saw that some of you wore ties, I thought I better put on a tie. Australians are extremely informal. We often just wear very casual clothes to church. That's a very different way of approaching things. So we're not totally the same as you, but I think on the core convictions and the core beliefs we are. And I just want to say thank you. The building that we have, we paid, or Jack Hardcastle paid $22,000 in 1969. Guess how much it's worth today? We have the two same blocks. We've had 3 building extensions. Have a guess. What would you expect in Arkansas? $22,000 in 1969, 50 years ago. What would you expect your property to be worth today? Give me a figure. 2 million more. No, 3 million, slightly more. It's between 3 and 4, we think. And we want to be responsible for that, because part of your money, and if not your money, it's, you were around, so you might have contributed to that, Don. But if not you, it's your moms and dads, or it might be some of your relatives. You guys have contributed that to us, and we want to be responsible for that. We've got this short video. That's, by the way, our building that shows part of the extension. There's another bit at the end after that, which was just built 10 years ago. You are most welcome to come to Melbourne, and if you do, please let us know. Steve's got my email. Okay? Enjoy the video. We made this for our anniversary Sunday a month ago. It wasn't meant for you. This was for our members. So I'm giving you a sort of, it's one of the young adults who did this for us. Oh, okay. Maybe after the video I'll come back. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. And I have one more item to give, and this is something that I shared with Don before. So who should I give this to? To Don or to Steve or to, is it Jason? Okay, maybe to Jason. This is a little plaque that we made 4 of these for each of the 4 congregations that we found in our records. This one, it says Cave Springs Church of Christ, Cave Springs, Arkansas, USA. Thank you for your prayers and generous support during our early years. To God be the glory. Philippians 1:3. Belmore Road Church of Christ, 50th anniversary, 1969 to 2019, Melbourne, Australia. And we put a globe of the world, and of course we put Australia right up front, not the United States. Okay? But we just want you to have this as, as just a symbol, and just for you to know that you've sowed some seeds. And I don't know where your mission points are, and if you're like us, some seeds we sow we have no idea whether they've grown or not. And maybe in some places they have not grown. But I can tell you that this one seed that you sowed 40, 50 years ago has grown, and it's come back. Yes, sir.
Suggest that it be given to Don, since he was very much a part of this work 50 years ago.
I don't know what I can say, what I want to. But I'll accept this on behalf of all of you. Because I could go into a long story of how that we got involved with this program. And it was because of the eldership that was back then and the foresight that they had. And I just hope that we continue in this congregation to have the same foresight. But I'll accept this on behalf of all of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. And on behalf of all the previous members of this congregation, who might be some of your families, thank you very much.
I've seen presentations of a lot of different awards in my lifetime. I don't know if there's anything better than that. To have elders from two different congregations come together and express their love for each other and their prayers and their wishes for the success in the work in the kingdom. Total polar opposite ends of the world, and it is a blessing for us to be able to be reunited back with a work like this. You guys know me. I'm now going to go back through a lot of our records and see what other congregations in the past have, places in the world have we been a part of that maybe we've lost touch with and to reconnect with. It would be very interesting to know. But I'm hoping, Brother Benny, that maybe this is just a beginning of many more things in the future to be able to work together and to encourage each other, and I hope that Lord willing, that we'll have opportunities to do that. Thank you for being here with us today. He also brought, this is a book that they have put together kind of when we did a couple years ago for our 100-year anniversary. They have a booklet that kind of walks through some of the history and a lot of pictures and things of the congregation there, but they included the financial statement from 1969 that shows the congregations that were involved in the beginning of the work there. This piece of paper is how they learned about Cave Springs, and it shows in 1959. Oh, this is 81. This is 81. This is August 31st of 81. The Cave Springs Church of Christ. It shows it gives the amounts of the different congregations that have helped out with the work there. I love to see other name, Ian McPherson. I got to know Brother Ian when I was in Devonport, and the work with the school and the training that they have done there, and it's kind of neat to me even to see some of the connections that I've made in Australia in the past. And so very, very, very encouraging. It encourages me. What more can we do? What more can God do through us if we continue to have the vision and the heart to continue to reach out in places around the world that have not had those opportunities, in our own community? What can God do? This is just a reminder. This is a breath of fresh air to remind us again that God is powerful and that He is continuing to work in ways that we will not know. And so, again, thank you very much. it's always, as we look at, I see just through the video and through the pictures there, they're Australians, they're Aussies, but they're our brothers and sisters. And sometimes, if you haven't had the chance to travel the world, sometimes it was hard for me for a long time to see reports and pictures like this and really make that connection that they are our brothers and sisters in the Lord's church together. And seeing them and knowing them, if you have opportunities to travel to different mission points and different places in the world, even if you're just traveling for fun, seek out our brethren in other places in the world and make those connections. You will be blessed, and they will as well. And so we're blessed here at Cave to be able to have opportunity to be a part of many different works in different places around the world, and to see the Lord working in such ways. Again, I can't help but to say what more can be done with God's help and His blessing through what small little church in Northwest Arkansas. And that is the evidence that it's not us. It's God that is working through what we might be able to do to help. And so, we're going to sing an invitation song here in just a moment. As invitation, I think the thought is really right along that line of challenging ourselves for what more can I do? What am I able to contribute to the work that God is doing? Again, right here in our community, or maybe it is someplace around the world where there are brethren who are in need of help to just get something started, to get something planted, to get something moving, so that the Lord's church can have the impact that it needs to in those areas. If there's anyone here tonight, if there's a need that you have, that may be you saying, we're talking about the needs of people around the world. I have needs myself. If there is something in your life that we as the body of Christ here, we can help with, it's spiritual needs or just the everyday life things that you're dealing with, as the body, that's what we're for. And so if there is a need, if there's anything that we as a church can do to encourage, to support, to help in any way, would you let us know? If there is someone here that needs to respond to the gospel call, as we said, that one connection that has connected Cave Springs to Melbourne is Jesus Christ. And it is His sacrifice. And it's responding to that sacrifice that makes that connection. So if there's anyone here that needs to obey the gospel call of Jesus Christ tonight, would you make that decision? You can do that tonight as we stand and as we sing this song.
What you 946. Why did my Savior come to
Let's pray. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this day that you have given us, this wonderful Lord's Day where we come together and worship you. We ask that you please be with our sister. She partakes of the bread that was broken. Please help her to do it in a way that is pleasing to you. We ask that you please forgive us when we sin. In your Son's name we pray. Amen. Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this wonderful day that you bless us with. Father, going back to that time your Son sacrificed himself on the cross for our sins. Father, I pray that you help our sister. Father, help her to just be able to go back to that event, Father, the significance of it, Father, this fruit of the vine, which represents his blood shed, which cleanses us from our sins, Father. We're so thankful for that. It's in your name we pray.
I know that Brother Benny and Shane's, they're gonna be trying to get out of here pretty quick. I know you guys, we are a grab them and talk to them forever type of people, but they're trying to get to Cersei really quick, so don't hold it against them if they have to move out of here pretty quick. Again, we appreciate you being here with us. I did want to mention to everybody's gonna be involved with the camp out, on the 11th and 12th. There is information out in the foyer concerning the times and kind of the schedule of things as they're going to be going on that weekend. Also a map and an explanation of all the sites that have been reserved for different families. And so if you're a part of that, Teresa and Naomi, they spent a lot of time and work putting this all together. And so it's going to be a great weekend. If you have not said anything or talked to them about being a part of that, it's not too late. We've got a camper spot. We'll cram some more tents or something on it. We'll make it work. But if you want to be a part of that, or even just come out during the day and enjoy the day with us, we want everyone to be out there if you're at all possible. So we're going to be led in one more song and then a closing prayer, and then we'll be dismissed.
Number 144. 144. Shall we stand? First verse. 144. Blessed be the side that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that of love.
Let's bow. Our Father God, we